Let me show you how bad business is this New Year's holiday. This is Dawang Road in Beijing. Shops are either closed for good or temporarily shut down. Even the few restaurants that remain open are practically empty. How are things where you are? Will 2025 be any better?
Friends and family, have you ever seen a mall this empty? This used to be one of the busiest places in Beijing, but now it presents a completely different scene. This enormous mall has become eerily quiet. Shops are empty, and no one is around. The mannequins are still standing here, waiting for someone to stop by. Christmas is just around the corner. In past years, this place was bustling with life. People shopping, eating, watching movies, and buying gifts for their children. But this year, it's completely deserted. The once brilliant lights and lively crowds have been replaced by empty storefronts and silent window displays. Standing here, you can feel the chill of an economic decline sinking into your bones. This massive mall is practically empty except for me. Seeing all of this, I can't help but wonder, what's happened to Beijing?
What's going on with the business environment these days? Behind me is Beijing Railway Station. Take a look ahead. Back when I first started in this industry, my manager told me that corner shops and street-facing stores were prime spots. Corners were the golden angle, and street-facing stores were the silver stretch. In places like Beijing Railway Station, every spot was a golden angle because of the heavy foot traffic. But look now, across the street, even KFC, Mr. Lee's, and the supermarket have all shut down. What's happening? Can someone tell me? If anyone in the comments knows, let's chat privately.
After the pandemic ended in 2023, China's economy showed no signs of recovery. By 2024, the situation deteriorated even further. Many foreign companies withdrew from cities like Beijing and Shanghai, and foreign tourists nearly disappeared. Domestic companies faced massive layoffs, and consumer spending continued to decline. Everywhere you look, shops are shutting down. The weak consumer demand has dealt a heavy blow to the restaurant industry, leaving it struggling to survive.
Look at this whole row of snack shops. They're all gone. This one's closed. That grilled fish place is shut down. And the beef noodle shop's gone too. Do you realize how brutal the food and beverage industry is this year? Let me take you to Food Treasure Street at Beijing Hantianqiao, once a bustling food hub. Look at how bad things are now. Back in the day, it was nearly impossible to get a spot here. People would pay tens of thousands extra for a lease. Now, many big-name restaurants can't survive. Only a handful are still holding on, relying on takeout orders just to scrape by. Even well-known brands across the country are struggling here. Just look at this place. Business is so bleak, there's barely any lighting. This beef noodle shop is barely hanging on, while the flat noodle and beef jerky shops have shut down. A couple of places are still open, but most storefronts are empty or abandoned. A few years ago, this was a trendy hotspot. Now, it's dark and desolate, like a ghost town.
On an old street, 4 restaurants on either side of the road have already closed their doors, and 6 others that are still operating have posted signs saying for rent or for transfer. One owner said they're just holding on until the lease ends before shutting down. This is a real scene recently witnessed in Beijing, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Severe product homogenization, escalating price wars, and industry-wide cutthroat competition have become the norm, leaving more and more restaurants struggling and bleeding losses. Industry research shows that in 2024, over 90% of restaurants experienced a 20 to 30% drop in performance. A seasoned industry expert recently told Hongcan Network, a Chinese aggregator of restaurant data. He said, due to an oversupply in the market, many more restaurants in Beijing are likely to close. By April 2025, as much as 35% of restaurants may shut down before supply and demand reach a balanced state.
It's 3 p.m. in Beijing, and the streets are eerily quiet. Few people, even fewer cars. Some say it's because many people from Beijing have moved to Japan. The main reason? Japan has the world's best healthcare. When will a country's healthcare and education systems lead in Asia and benefit ordinary people?
On January 1st, 2025, Mr. Yan from Beijing posted a video showing his visit to the city's economic development zone. The weather was nice and not too cold, but he felt the city was overwhelmingly bleak. One commenter wrote, "It used to take me 15 minutes to get to work, but now it's 30. The number of people on the streets has visibly dropped." Beijing, a city that once attracted countless young people, is losing its appeal. High living costs, fierce job competition, and falling wages have left many young people feeling lost and helpless about their future. Leaving Beijing in search of a better life and opportunities elsewhere has become a growing trend. Beijing is getting harder to make a living in. While we were eating, my husband suddenly said, "If we both lose our jobs someday, let's sell the house and move back to your hometown." Years ago, he joked about this, but this time he was serious. My husband is a native Beijinger. His parents lived within the Second Ring Road, and they had stable jobs and homes in the city. When he was in middle school, his family was relocated from the Second Ring to beyond the Fifth Ring due to urban redevelopment. After we had kids, half of our monthly income went towards paying off the mortgage. He always says life now feels worse with each generation. 20 years ago, there were opportunities everywhere in Beijing, but now it's getting harder to make a living. He also points out how fewer people are around, with waves of shops closing. When we talk to friends, everyone seems unhappy these days. I think he's facing setbacks at work again. I tried to console him, reminding him of 3 things. First, his parents are aging and need us here. Second, our kids need to keep their Beijing school registration. Sending them to compete academically in Jiangsu province would be even tougher. Third, if we return to my hometown, what would we do? We can't just sit idly by and use up our savings. The growing number of unemployed has led to an oversaturation of people entering the ride-hailing industry. This has caused driver incomes to drop, with multiple drivers competing for a single passenger, a clear reflection of economic downturn. After being away for a year, Beijing feels like a completely different city. People on the streets no longer smile. On the subway, everyone looks worried or stares at their phones. I took 6 ride-hailing trips, and 5 of the drivers were former business owners or had been laid off. I was stunned. Back when I first came to Beijing to take my art exams, taxi drivers didn't want short trips. Now it's completely different. Business owners who've had to shut down are driving ride-hailing cars. I saw it firsthand when leaving Peking University Third Hospital. A line of taxis was waiting outside. I called a ride-hailing car, and the driver said, "Don't worry about canceling. I'll turn around to pick you up." As I hesitated, another taxi driver waved me over, yelling, "Hurry, get in!" He looked well-dressed, the type you'd never imagine would compete for passengers. As I apologized to the first driver who was already helping with my luggage, I thought, this would have been unimaginable in the past. Beijing taxi drivers fighting over passengers. What's happening to the city? On January 2nd, 2025, another video captured the Baorong World Trade Mall in Beijing, eerily empty with barely any shoppers. The mall used to boast 5,000 shops and once served as a bustling hub for wholesale trade nationwide and internationally, including markets in Russia and Mongolia. But now it's a shadow of its former self. Discussions about layoffs and pay cuts among Beijing businesses offer a glimpse into the severity of China's economic struggles. One young woman working in Beijing shared her experience of being laid off in a video. "Today is my last day at work. The company laid off 50% of its staff at the end of the year, and I happened to be on the list. During the day, I forced a smile as friends tried to comfort me. But at night, lying alone in bed, I felt helpless and lost. Should I go back home for the new year, or stay in Beijing and continue job hunting? 5 years ago, when I graduated from college, my parents had arranged a stable 9-to-5 job for me in my hometown, a life you could see stretched out predictably ahead. I was unwilling to settle, so I quit that secure job and came to Beijing, full of hopes and dreams. I chose to be what they call a Beijing drifter because I wanted to prove myself. To save money, I rented an 8-square-meter room. For my first job, I worked overtime for an entire month just to secure a permanent position. I've been kicked out by landlords in the middle of the night and moved house 3 times on my own. Every time I think about these struggles, I wonder, am I being too stubborn? Should I compromise? If I keep pushing forward, it means staying in my rented room, eating takeout, and continuing the exhausting job search. If I compromise, it means going back home to take a job that pays 2,000 or 3,000 yuan a month and living a life I can already predict in detail. What should I do? Where should I go?" On December 25th, 2024, Mr. Jia, who works in the loan assistant business in Beijing, posted a video saying,
It's getting really tough to make money these days. The economy is in a downturn. Unemployment is high, and wages are low. In Beijing, I've noticed many locals only earn 2,000 to 3,000 yuan, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 a month at most. That's barely enough, and it's even worse for people from other provinces. They often earn less. It's harsh. What should we do next? If you have the means, consider going abroad.
When I arrived at work today, I was hit with devastating news. At 37 years old, unmarried, and after drifting in Beijing for over a decade, I've been part of the so-called internet labor force. The job market in Beijing is undeniably bleak right now, especially for people like me, those over 35 who employers seem to avoid. Layoffs are coming in waves, and I've heard even top graduates from prestigious universities like the 985 and 211 schools are struggling to find jobs. As the year-end approaches, my company held a quarterly meeting where the leadership plainly stated that their focus going forward would be on structural adjustments and personnel optimization, a euphemism for mass layoffs. We've been told to mentally prepare, as 40% of staff are expected to be cut. Just as the new year's around the corner, it seems like the company doesn't want anyone to have a good holiday. According to China's National Bureau of Statistics, the nationwide urban surveyed unemployment rate from January to November 2024 averaged 5.1%, a 0.1% drop compared to the previous year. However, this figure starkly contrasts with the realities on the ground. Recently, a poll conducted on Xiaohongshu by Chinese netizens showed an alarming youth unemployment rate of 50.6% among participants aged 18 to 40. The economic downturn is also evident from the total retail sales data. In November 2024, Beijing and Shanghai saw another sharp decline in retail sales. Beijing's retail sales dropped by 14.1% year-over-year, while Shanghai's fell by 13.7%. These numbers, reported by the Municipal Statistics Bureaus, reveal that Beijing's decline is steeper than Shanghai's. The city's property prices and retail figures are also plummeting faster than Shanghai's. A female lawyer in Beijing shared in a video. Consumer spending in Beijing and Shanghai is declining across the board, even during Christmas and New Year's. Is it because people don't have money? Someone born and raised in Beijing, I can tell you that's not entirely true. There are plenty of wealthy people in the city. Go to any upscale neighborhood, and you'll see rows of Mercedes and BMWs in the parking lots. Beijing and Shanghai have long been home to the nation's wealthiest, with many high-income middle-class residents. But the truth is, people are holding back on spending, not because they lack money, but because they're worried about the future. No matter if you work for a private company or a state-owned enterprise, anyone could lose their job at any time. Given the current economic situation, finding another decent job afterward would be very difficult. Thinking about the uncertainty of the future income, even those earning good money today don't dare to spend freely. They're saving as much as they can. This cautious mindset is especially pronounced among the middle class. Regular people who already live on tight budgets can't cut back much more, as their spending is mostly on essentials. But white-collar workers and professionals have made visible changes. They've gone from dining at high-end restaurants to cooking at home, from drinking high-end coffee to budget alternatives. Take a look at cinema box office numbers. On Christmas Eve 2024, the box office revenue was only a quarter of what it was in 2023, marking a 13-year low. Why? Because a movie date now costs over 100 yuan for two people, and many can't justify that expense anymore. A market analyst noted that the declining retail sales in Beijing and Shanghai are partly due to the departure of high-net-worth individuals over the past few years, as some foreign companies have pulled out of China. This has weakened consumer spending significantly. While this trend has been ongoing, it became especially apparent in 2024. Recently, a Beijing resident spoke with a friend who used to work within the government system in Beijing. He said the city has become shockingly desolate. They said, don't trust the official unemployment figures. If you include those over 35, the real unemployment rate is over 50%. Many people have turned to driving for Didi ride-hailing or delivering food because those jobs have the lowest barriers to entry. But with so many people flooding into these roles, competition is fierce, and earnings are dropping. It's a desperate scramble just to make ends meet. There are fewer non-local residents living in Beijing now, fewer people shopping, and fewer diners at restaurants. Places like Wangfujing and Xidan, once bustling hubs, are now nearly empty. Even essential businesses are struggling. Near my house, a branch of the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China has shut down, as has the China Unicom Service Center and a large restaurant. A shopping mall I often visit has very little foot traffic on regular days. Even on weekends, the restaurants get a bit busier, but it's nowhere near pre-pandemic levels. It's so hard to make money now. Things are so bad that traffic police are even fining cyclists for minor infractions. It's unbelievable. Privately, many people are openly criticizing President Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. Even intellectuals who once supported him are now disillusioned. More and more people are realizing that the root of the problem is the Communist Party. It simply doesn't care about ordinary people. But what can they do? The party controls the guns, and people feel powerless. If Beijing is this desolate, and even those within the system are worried, it's clear how dire the situation in China has become. According to JP Morgan, China's economy will continue to worsen in 2025, with growth slowing to 3.9%. For Chinese citizens already struggling, the question remains, how will they survive in the years to come?